Hello YouTube. Let me tell you today about the pagan people who reside in the heart of Russia and some of their customs, very interesting beliefs, and some of their mysteries. And I want to start by letting you know that the Mari are the only people of Central Russia who are allowed the so-called traditional religion in the Russian Federation. It is allowed to all the indigenous peoples of the far north and Siberia. As for the rest of the peoples of Russia living in a more favorable habitat, the Mari represent the only exception here. Their traditional religious associations, referred to as pagan in Judeo-Christian and Muslim terminology, are officially recognized by the Russian state. So what's going on here? Well, their own name for themselves, Mari, comes from the word mar, or man. Mari belong to the ancient Uralic community, like all the Finno-Ugrians, like people in Finland, Hungary, related. At the same time, Mari belong to the sub-Ural anthropological type and retain a large number of Mongol features. The appearance of the Mari, for the most part, for example, is characterized by dark hair, darker skin than that of the Europeans, medium height, and almond-shaped eyes. The beliefs of the Mari people belonging to this Finno-Ugric group and living in the Russian Republic of Mariel are almost 15 centuries old. Since the 6th century, the people have kept the traditions of worshipping deities, personifying the forces of nature, and I'll tell you through the video about such beliefs and their deities, but let me give you some history. The Mari people showed a very long and stubborn resistance to the Russian domination. Until the middle of the 16th century, the Mari were subject of the Kazan Khanat, or kingdom. History has not preserved any mention of any conflicts between the Mari people and the Kazan kings, but the Mari people did not accept the Russian government from the very beginning. These savages are ferocious, according to the Russian historian Karamzin. Embittered, probably by the cruelty of Tsar officials, they fought with Moscow soldiers on the ashes of their homes in forests and nativity scenes in summer and winter. They wanted independence or death. In the second half of the 16th century alone, the Mari people raised 3 powerful uprisings. They went down in history as the Cheremis Wars. That's what the Russians called the Mari people, Cheremis, until 1917. Well, the first Cheremis War began in the first year after the capture of Kazan and lasted 5 years. The second raged between 1571 and 1574, and the third one broke out in 1581. And the Tsar's troops managed to suppress it only after the death of Ivan the Terrible in 1585. I need to add again that most likely he was taken out by the British intelligence service of that century. And I have a video about it. You can't escape history. The Mari people were supported with various degrees of intensity by other peoples of the Volga region, which were part of the Kazan Khanate, Tatars, Bashkirs, Chuvash, and Udmurts. All native people, all indigenous people. But still, the backbone of the uprisings, their striking force, has always been the Mari. These were not isolated spontaneous riots. To suppress the uprisings of the Cheremis, every time it was necessary to gather large military forces, comparable to those that the Moscow state participated in the wars with Lithuania or the Crimea. By the way, in no small part, because of the Cheremis wars, Russia lost the Livonian War in those years and allowed the Crimeans to burn Moscow in 1571. The suppression of the Mari people, the deprivation of their traditional independence, forced baptism, and similar circumstances did not break the freedom-loving spirit of this people. At the end of the 17th century, the Mari people took an active part in the uprising led by Stepan Razin, Russian Kazakh leader, against the tax, serfdom, and church policies of the Romanovs, of the dynasty of the Russian Tsars Romanov. Well, the Tsar authorities were so afraid of the Mari people that they forbade them to live in cities as well as to engage in blacksmithing. The ban was in effect until the abolition of serfdom in 1861. Well, Russians used to think of the Mari as backward people living somewhere in the backwoods, almost hunting and gathering. However, this impression came up as a result of the systematic policy of the Tsar's authorities to out the Mari people from the lands favorable for agriculture. Russian landowners and their serfs were resettled on those lands. The Mari people have been purposely pushed into forests and swamps for centuries, although they have long been an agricultural people. On the other hand, in these forests and swamps, despite the coercion of the official church, the traditional religion of the Mari people was able to survive. And I will describe it to you as much as possible. The Tsar authorities also fought with the faith of the Mari as best as they could to the last. So, for example, in 1834, by the order of Emperor Nicholas I, Iraq was blown up, revered by the Mari people as the refuge of one of their gods. So, again, the same year, Tsar's Minister of Internal Affairs carried out the order, and they blew up the prayer store in the town of Chumbelat Kurik. However, the priests and officials did not take into the account that the locals did not worship the stone or the rock, but the deity who lived in this place. The persecution continued in Soviet times, of course, but the Mari carried their faith and rituals through the centuries, which unfortunately cannot be said about mythology. Only a few legends have survived, but cool legends. Thus, the preservation of the Mari people of their traditional religion in modern Russia is the result of the persistent struggle of these people for political and spiritual independence, which has not stopped for centuries. The traditional occupations of the Cheremis left a serious imprint on their beliefs. For example, one of the most important crafts was beekeeping. It had several patron gods at once, but bread and vegetables had gods or deities much later, although the locals mastered slash and burn agriculture, and almost all the cultures of Eastern Europe were doing this by the 9th century. Hunting was an important occupation too. Over time, the production of fur-bearing animals turned into real fishery, so to say. Fishing was no less important. The tribes lived surrounded by rivers in a difficult marshy area, and that's why they moved mainly by water. No wonder Catherine the Great, the Empress, after the bloody Pugachev uprising in the 18th century, she forbade them to settle near the rivers. Well, Mari had their own blacksmithing practice, but they did not extract the material themselves. Mostly they bought from neighboring peoples, and we know that this was not encouraged by the Russian Tsars. Anyway, it is curious that non-ferrous metallurgy and jewelry art were mainly engaged in or produced and worked on by women. Hence, interesting features of the Mari women's costume, in particular the predominance of various decorations. The exact date of the origin of the Mari faith is impossible to establish, according to scientists. However, during the 6th to 9th centuries, when the Mari ethnic group was formed, beliefs already existed. The supreme deity of the Mari people is Kuguyomo, or Kogayuma, but usually they say Kuguyomo, personifying the universe, heavenly and earthly natural forces, the unity of the origin of the people from one progenitor. Deities are divided into two groups, higher and lower. There are two most important ones. The good one, the already mentioned Yumo, and the evil one is Keremet. Yumo has a retinue, mother, creator, and predestining guide, prophet, speaker, guardian angel. There are about 30 higher deities. There are also subordinates. For example, there are more than 50 patrons of agriculture, and there are also goddess of nature, the most revered of which is the goddess of birth, Shochinava. In total, there are 180 deities and spirits. A characteristic feature of the Mari religion is public sacrifices in honor of the patrons of agricultural labor, which are held in specifically designated groves for prayers. And I'll describe them in greater detail. This is the main prayer of all Mari people. It takes place in this grove probably about 5 to 7 years. Today, about 300 sacred groves have been studied. 64 of them have been registered in Kuzhenersky district. And prayers are held regularly in 29. According to the head of the community of Mari traditional religion, Oshmari Chimari, is also Mari priest or Kart. Here's a report from a few years ago. Preparations began early in the morning when about 1,000 people, including a large number of young people, gathered in the grove. This time, a goose was chosen as a sacrificial animal. A ram, a sheep, and a horse can also be chosen as a victim. While the bird was being plucked and butchered, water was boiling in huge iron cauldrons. There were several dozen boilers in total. In some, meat was cooked, in other, porridge. When everything was ready, the sacrificial tables were set, on which bread, plates with food were placed, and candles were lit. After all the preparations, the prayer itself began. Prayers were read in the Mari language, under which food was fumigated with a smoking brand. In Russian Orthodox Christianity, there is a tradition of bell ringing, and Mari, for them, it is a knife striking on an axe. This sound among the Mari symbolizes the desire to reach out to the Almighty, the Mother of God, or other gods. After the rites, the faithful, together with the guests, began to eat. Well, we know that about 14% today of Mariel residents are adherents of traditional religion. 13 communities have been created for them in the Republic, which are taken into the account by the Republican Center of Mari Culture. This center conducts rituals and also helps to create the same religious communities for Mari people living in other regions. 6 were created in Bashkiria, 1 each in the Nizhny Novgorod region and Tatarstan. And in addition to these regions, there are many Mari people in the Sverdlovsk and Perm regions of the Ural Mountains. Young people adopt the traditional beliefs of the Mari people. There are especially many young people at summer prayers. At the same time, they come not only from Mari El, but also from other regions. There you can see clearly the young people want to learn their traditional Mari religion, learn from the experience of the Karts, the priests. They actively help in the ennobling of sacred places, according to local spokesman. In 2019, the center opened the Mari School, where those who wish, within the framework of the professional retraining program for specialists in the field of national and religious relations, they will be able not only to learn more about the traditional religions of the Mari people, but also to study the creation of the non-profit organizations, office management, and accounting. The training lasts 8 months. Students study 1 week a month, and graduates will be issued a certificate stating that they are specialists in the history of religion. Such specialists can also serve as priests or karts. You see, the Finno-Ugric people believe in spirits, worship trees, and beware of Ovda. Mari story originated on another planet, where a duck flew and laid 2 eggs, from which 2 brothers appeared, a good one and an evil one. That's how life on earth began. The Mari people believe in this. Their rituals are unique. The memory of their ancestors never fades. And the way of life of these people is imbued with respect for the gods of nature. Legends say that the Mari story began far from Earth, on another planet. A duck flew from the constellation of the Nest to the blue planet, laid 2 eggs, again, from which 2 brothers appeared. The Mari people still call the stars and planets in their own way. The Big Dipper, the constellation of the Moose. The Milky Way is the starry road along which God walks. The Pleiades, the constellation of the Nest. In autumn, hundreds of Mari people come to the big grove. Each family brings a duck or a goose. This is Purlik, a sacrificial animal for holding Marie prayers. Only healthy, beautiful, and well-fed birds are selected for the ceremony. Many people are lining up to the priest or cart. They check whether the bird is suitable for the sacrifice and then ask its forgiveness and sanctify with smoke. It turns out that this is how the Marie express respect for the spirit of fire, and it burns bad words and thoughts, clearing space for cosmic energy. Marie people consider themselves children of nature, and their religion is such that they pray in the forest, in specially designated places which they call groves. By turning to the tree, they thereby turn to the cosmos, and there is a connection of the worshippers with the outer space. They do not have any churches or other structures where the Marie people would play. In nature, they feel like a part of it, and communication with God goes through the tree and through sacrifices. Well, sacred groves were not planted on purpose. They have existed since ancient times. Groves for prayers were chosen by the Marie ancestors. It is believed that there is a very strong energy in these places. Well, groves were chosen for a reason. At first they looked at the sun, at the stars and comets. Sacred groves are called ku soto in Mari. They are generic, village-wide, and also for all the Mari people. In some places, prayers can be held several times a year. In others, once every 5 to 7 years. In total, more than 300 sacred groves have been preserved in the Republic of Mariel. In sacred groves, it is forbidden to swear, sing, and make noise. A great power is held in these sacred places. Marie people prefer nature, and nature is God to them. They refer to nature as Mother, Wood Ava, Mother of Water, Mlande Ava, Mother of Earth. The most beautiful and the tallest tree in the grove is the main one. It is dedicated to the one supreme God Yumo, or his the divine helpers. Rites are held near this tree. Well, no matter how many people come to the grove, there are enough treats for everyone. Porridge will also be taken home to treat those who could not come there. In the grove, all the attributes of prayer are very simple, no frills. This is done to emphasize that everyone is equal before God. The most valuable thing in this world is person's thoughts and actions. And the sacred grove is an open portal of cosmic energy, the center of the universe. Therefore, with what attitude the Marie will enter the sacred grove, it will reward him with such energy. When everyone leaves, the priests, carts, and the assistants will be left to restore order. They'll come here the next day to complete the ceremony. After such great prayers, the sacred grove should rest for 5 to 7 years. No one will come here. No one will destroy the peace of the grove. The grove will be charged with cosmic energy, which in a few years during prayers it will again give to the Mari people in order to strengthen their faith in one bright God, nature, and cosmos. Sacred groves are so important to the Mari people that for 5 centuries they have been fighting for their preservation and defending their right to their own faith. Again, at first they opposed Christianization, then the Soviet government they fought against in order to divert the attention of the church from the sacred groves. Some Mari formally adopted Russian Christian Orthodox faith. The people went to church services and then secretly performed the Mari rites. As a result, there was a mixture of religions. Many Christian symbols and traditions entered the Mari faith. The sacred grove is perhaps the only place where women rest more than they work. They only pluck and butcher birds. Men are engaged in everything else. They make bonfires, install boilers, cook broth and porridge, equip onapa. This is how the sacred trees are called. Next to the tree, special countertops are installed, which are first covered with fir branches symbolizing hands. Then they are covered with towels, and only then gifts are laid out. Near Onapu, there are tablets with the names of the gods. The main one is Tun Oshkugoyumo, the one bright great God. Those who come to the prayers decide which of the deities they present bread, kvass, honey, pancakes to, and they also hang gift towels, handkerchiefs. Some things will be taken home by the Marie after the ceremony, but something will remain hanging in the grove. Now, why do they beware of Ovda? Once upon a time there lived a rebellious Marie Beauty, but she angered the celestials, and the god turned her into a terrible creature of Ovda, with big breasts that can be thrown over her shoulder, with black hair and feet turned heels forward. People tried not to encounter her, and although Ovda could help a person, but more often she caused damage. She used to curse entire villages. According to the legends, the Ovda lived on the outskirts of villages in the forest, in ravines. In the old days, residents often encountered her, but in the 21st century, no one saw this terrible woman. However, in the remote places where she lived alone, even today they try not to go to. Rumor has it that she took refuge in the caves. There's a place called Odokurik, or of the mountain. In the depths of the forest lie megaliths, huge boulders of rectangular shape. They are very similar to man-made blocks. The stones have smooth edges, and they are composed in such a way that they form a jagged fence. Megaliths are huge, but it's not so easy to notice them. They seem to be artfully disguised, but for what? One of the accounts of the appearance of megaliths is that they are man-made defensive structure. Probably in the older days, the local population was protected at the expense of this mountain, and this fortress was built by hands in the form of ramparts. A sharp descent was accompanied by an ascent. It was very difficult for the enemies to run along these ramparts, and the locals knew the paths and could hide and shoot arrows. There is an assumption that the Mari people could have fought with the Udmurts, as local indigenous people, for land. But what kind of power did it take to process the megaliths and install them? Even several people or more won't be able to move these boulders. Only mystical beings can move them. According to beliefs, it was Ovda who could install stones to hide the entrance to her cave, and therefore they say there is a special energy in these places. Well, psychics come to the megaliths trying to find the entrance to the cave, a source of energy. But the Mari prefer not to disturb the Ovda, because her character is like a natural element, unpredictable and uncontrollable. Although no one has seen the mystical woman for a long time, the Mari people believe in her existence and often call healers Ovda. After all, worshippers, prophets, female prophets, herbalists, in fact, are the conductors of the most unpredictable natural energy. But only healers, unlike ordinary people, know how to manage it and thereby cause fear and respect among the people. Let me tell you about the Mari bagpipe, shuvir. A cow's salty bladder will ferment in a jar of porridge for 2 weeks, from which they will then make a magical shuvir. Already a tube, a horn will be attached to the soft bladder, and a Mari bagpipe will be made. Each element of the shuvir gives the instrument its own power. Now the shuvirzo understands the voices of the animals and birds during the game, so to say, during playing that instruments, and listeners fall into a trance during the performance. There are even reported cases of healing, and the music of shuvir opens the passage to the world of spirits. Beekeeping is the Mari culture. They have it. According to the Mari legends, bees were among the last to appear on earth. They got here not even from the constellation of Pleiades, but from another galaxy. Otherwise, how to explain the unique properties of everything that bees produce? Honey, wax, perga, propolis. Alexander Tanigin is the supreme cart or the priest. According to Marie laws, every priest must keep an apiary. Alexander has been engaged with his beekeeping since childhood. He studied their habitats. As he says himself, he understands that bees just by casting a glance at them. Beekeeping is one of the oldest occupations of the Mari people. In the old days, people paid taxes with honey, parchment, and wax. In modern villages, beehives are in almost every yard. Honey is one of the main ways to earn money. From above, the hive is covered with all things. This is insulation. I've tried various kinds of honey all over the world, wherever I could, and I know that Bashkir honey is great. But I've never tried Mari honey, and maybe one day I will. I am sure it's great. Let's look at what some Mari say about themselves. Just from doing my research, I take down notes sometimes, and the most interesting things are here. Mari go to the sacred groves for a holiday, and this is the faith of their ancestors. They do not impose their own on anyone, but they must know the history of their ancestors who died in battles. The Mari did not come to Moscow by war, but it is from Moscow they came with fire and sword. Next one is this. Commentators who write that they live in Mariel, seriously, don't you know that many Mari are both Christians and pagans? Don't you know about the sacred prayer groves? Haven't you heard about the magic rituals that the real Mari know well? Well, you were directly surprised, and you don't know about the fact that there is officially a supreme court of Mariel either. Paganism is not out there somewhere. It is quite tangible in the Republic. And if Yoshkar Ola is all but built up with Orthodox churches, so it's not the whole Republic yet. One woman wrote that their neighborhood is full of prayer groves, some even with signs, and kind grandmothers who treat people, and sorcerers. And there are the supreme cards, the priests. It was in Mariel that they were forcibly baptized, speaking about the history of the people, from Ivan the Terrible onwards. And those who fled to Bashkiria, Ervel Mari, they remain pagans. Now, more people are becoming Christians. It's more just easier that way, but they don't forget about their true faith either. Among the Mari people, according to scientists, echoes of the dualistic worldview have been preserved, in which an important place was occupied by faith in magic, in the animateness and spirituality of the surrounding world, and the existence in it of a reasonable, independent, materialized being, a double host, Vodish, soul, Chon, spiritual hypostasis, Shert. However, the Mari believe that the deities, everything around the world, and the man himself are part of the one God, Yumo, his image. Adherents of the Mari religion, respecting the rights and freedoms of representatives of other faiths, expect the same respect for themselves and the cult magical actions performed. They believe that the worship of the one God, the universe in our time, is very timely and quite attractive for the modern generation of people interested in spreading the ecological movement and preserving pristine nature. Prayer meetings and mass prayers are held in accordance with the traditional calendar, which the community establishes according to tradition and internal contract. The calendar necessarily takes into account the position of the moon and the sun. The family is the basis of human community, one of the foundations of human existence and society. Marriage is recognized as sacred, and its dissolution is condemned. The most important is the relationship between generations, the veneration of the elders by the youth, and the absolute responsibility of the elders for the upbringing of new generations. Marriage with non-believers is not condemned in religious canons and depends entirely on the opinion of the person himself, his parents and family. To put it very briefly, the main point of Mari is respect for nature in general, a thrifty attitude to the forest and all living things in it, and with kindness to kind people. So those are the pagans of Russia. Very interesting people. There are other different ethnicities in Russia that are of great interest, and I mentioned some in my videos, you can see, especially those that live in the faraway places. I am sure there is much more to the Mari story and their beliefs, rituals, and so forth, and perhaps sometime in the future I'll tell you more. I appreciate your attention to my work. If you can support my work and my research, please look at the links in the description to this video. Please subscribe to my channel. Please tell others and like my videos. I thank you again for your attention.